balancing your career and parenthood without burning out. That's what we're going to be talking about today. I've got some great guest speakers in Fran and Jodie. This is the second webinar we've done together. So it's amazing to have them, and I'll introduce them in much more detail in a second. But for those who don't know me, I'm Bethany Helliwell-Smith. I'm the founder of Awen Coaching, which I set up in 2020. I have over 12 years experience, and I probably should top that up because I think it's a little bit more than that. I've been saying that for a while. So to check that stat. But I specialise in supporting individuals to overcome stress and burnout. And I also work with organisations to build healthy, sustainable working cultures so they can have the amazing impact that they want to have, whilst also looking after the people that make it all possible, because charities are the people that work in them, and there isn't charities without them. So we need to look after the people. Given that we're talking about careers and parenthood today, I would be amiss if I didn't speak about my family a little bit. So I live with my husband, Alex, and our 19-month-old daughter, who is at the childminder today. I've just had a little picture of her posting the Christmas cards that I had to write for her in the post box at the childminder for all of her little friends. So that was very nice to see before I jumped on the webinar today. So juggling and balancing the whole time. And I'm really thrilled, as I mentioned, to be joined today by Fran and Jodie. They both are based in Sheffield, and they're the co-founders of Mantle, which is a consultancy and training provider supporting ethical businesses, charities, and social enterprises. As you can imagine by the title of the webinar today, these incredible ladies also wear an awful lot of hats. I learned about a new one that Fran's taken on just this morning when we were catching up. So Fran is also the co-founder of a tech for good startup called Family Phone, and has extensive experience in senior leadership, governance, income diversification. And I know a couple of people on this call are really into that particularly, so that's exciting, and also strategic development. Fran lives with her husband Craig and her 17-month-old son Patrick. So we'll love to hear a bit more about about Fran. Before I introduce Jodie, actually, Fran, do you want to just tell us a little bit more about yourself and your experience, and perhaps why you're excited about joining today?
Yeah, thanks, Bethany, and thank you for having me. So as Bethany kindly said, I'm Fran. I am the co-founder of Mantle and the co-founder of two tech for good startups now, Family Phone being one, and another one that's chipping away silently in the background. I'm not allowed to say too much about. And I've just taken on a part-time job as a lecturer at Sheffield Hallam. I have a little boy, Patrick. He came along quite late on in my life, after a long period of time of not thinking we could have kids. So my husband and I have been together for more than 25 years now. And yeah, so he's come along as a lovely surprise at this point in our lives. But what it has meant is figuring out how to navigate, having a baby, having a toddler, and all of the stuff that I'm doing on top of that, and trying to keep my head above water. So yeah, balancing career and burnout is very, very close to my heart right now. So I have a lot to say about it, but I also have an awful lot to learn.
Absolutely. And I think that's really crucial to mention, isn't it, Fran, that myself, Jodie and Fran are not sitting here as experts that have nailed this. We are sat here very much as people that are experiencing it in very similar ways to the people that have chosen to register for the webinar today. And I really hope that this is going to be an open discussion for us to learn from each other. So if anyone on the call has got anything that is really working for them, share, because that might be a game changer for someone else on the call today as well. So our other amazing guest speaker today is Jodie. Jodie has a master's in social enterprise and cooperative management and has over 15 years experience supporting social enterprises, charities and small businesses in various sectors. Jodie lives with her husband Sanjeet, and they have a 14-month-old son called Axel. So we are the three of us in the toddler era. So Jodie, tell us a little bit about you, what you're looking forward to discussing today, and why is it that this topic was something that was important for you to join us on today?
So hello, I'm Jodie, and I manage and found and manage a social enterprise that's been going for 16 years. That is now very much operates without me. I'm just kind of strategically involved, and I keep an eye on the cash flow and the finances. So for me, I started my career very early, straight into working for myself. Have only ever worked for one company since I started my career on a payroll. The rest of the time I've been on my own payroll. So for me, I was single for a long, long time before I met my husband. And I took the decision that I'd just work my ass off so that if the time ever came that I would have a family, I could take a bit of a step back. So that happened in my late 30s. And during that time, I'd managed staff that had gone and had kids and been on maternity. So I think I always say to Fran how naive I was. I actually use the F word in it because I was very naive. But yeah, I think having a little one and then managing kind of my own time, really, I'm not even employed by someone, I manage my own time, was a massive wake-up call. When I got pregnant, I realized that there was a lot of discrimination around maternity. There is still discrimination around having a little one, just simple things like not having changing, men not being able to take the little one to change, simple things like that. And I really got into Jodie Brealey, who wrote The Motherhood Penalty. And I read that book. It's a very good book to read, but it will make you very angry at times, but it's a positive anger. And she does give some tips on how to get around things. So since really reading that was even more of not really an eye-opener, because I think I was aware of that stuff, but I think I became super aware of it. So for me, kind of how I'm really interested in the conversation today, but also within that, how we are cared for as women in the work environment, and actually how we're considered and how policies need to be changed so that it's not a man's world. So yeah, that's kind of the angle that I come from a lot of this stuff on now. And setting up Mantle with Fran, we've had those discussions about, thinking about what those policies are as we start to bring people into work for us and things like that. So we're super aware of it all.
Absolutely. And that can be quite a challenging thing to think about, particularly when you're a startup, right? I would imagine it's maybe a bit easier when it's a bit more established, but the fact that you guys are thinking about that from the very beginning is a testament to how important this is. And that's great to hear. So I would love to kind of find out a little bit more. Let's dig in to this topic a bit more. So, Jodie, for yourself, could you tell us a little bit more about how you've personally navigated the challenges that come with juggling your career, your businesses, and your role as a parent, and perhaps what that looks like in terms of your working patterns with your husband and that kind of balance?
Yeah, so when I got pregnant, I was actually working for somebody. So my social enterprise is in the arts. So when COVID happened, I didn't actually know what was going to happen with it because we're a creative business. So I took a step back operationally and applied for quite a strategic job with an organisation in the city. So I was with them for 3 years, and whilst also part-time, whilst also running my business. And so I got pregnant when I was with them, and I was quite lucky in that I had an okay maternity with them. I got paid maternity, which I never thought I would ever even get in my career. But then when it came back to thinking about going back, I couldn't get my head around it. I just couldn't get my head around how it was going to work for me. I mean, people that know me say I didn't really have maternity leave, because I probably didn't, because I think I had probably 4 weeks where people left me alone. But even then, I was still doing the payroll for my own company. And by February, I was kind of messaging Fran being like, I'm really bored. I need to do something. So that's when Fran and I started conversations about starting up Mantle. So I think for me, I was very clear quite early on in my maternity, because he came in October time. I was very clear that actually I didn't really want to go back and work for somebody else and have to have those conversations. Like, I felt like it was going to be hard enough anyway. And I think there was a bit of a wake-up call of, I worked my ass off in my 20s and early 30s so that I didn't have to work for somebody else. Like, what am I doing? And so after having a bit of a talk to myself, it was, my post was attached to funding, but they were offering me another job, so I just requested redundancy instead. And I just said, like, I'd like you to make me redundant, because I don't want to come back on less hours, and actually I don't want the CEO role you're offering me, it's too much. So so for me, going back to working for myself was really key to it all. And then my husband works for a really big IT corporate company that are international, so he's often on international calls. He works with really kind of big corporate clients, and he got a promotion during my kind of, just after I'd had Axel, he got given this massive promotion. So luckily he works from home, which works really well, because if I need an hour, I can often see if I can work it around his lunchtime. If I need to do a call and he's around. And then, like today, our childcare has fallen through. So he's been able to start work earlier this morning at like 5-6 o'clock, and then finish a little bit earlier, and he'll pick some stuff up tonight. So I'm looking that where possible, we can do that. But I also have to still have flexibility, because if he gets an emergency call because he's in IT and he's the manager, he has to be involved in those conversations. So I think he's on a call with Axel right now, but it's kind of, I think he's juggling too. So he's learning how it is, which is great.
He's juggling his career and parenthood right now, isn't he?
He's learning how it's been for me for the last 6 months. So for me, that going back to having that flexibility was really key, so that I can just drop stuff if I need to. And the type of work that I was doing as well also was quite important. Like, I needed something that wasn't reliant on me being around, and I could change client times and things like that. So
wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, Jodie. And it's, similar to how me and my husband do. Actually, my husband's a civil servant, so he does have some flexibility within that, and he has recently started a new job, and it was a kind of definite that he needed to have quite different working hours than what was kind of prescribed on the job spec, and he wasn't going to take the job if they didn't allow him to work these hours. So that looks like Alex starting work at 6:30 every day, and then on the days where we don't have childcare, he finishes at 2, and I start work at 2 and work till 6. And then at the moment, Thursdays, Rosa goes into the childminder, and we both, myself and Alex, do much longer days to kind of make up our hours on that Thursday. But from January, we're going to have 2 days. My goodness, we've made the decision to up our childcare hours, and we're going to have a Wednesday and a Thursday. So I've got a few clients on the call today that are going to be like, right, I'm going to book in not on an afternoon then with you, Bethany, because I've luckily been very lucky to have very understanding clients that have accommodated having sessions and working with me in the majority of an afternoon, which has been great. But I will have a bit more flexibility come the new year. But it's tough, isn't it, to kind of juggle everything. And for yourself, Fran, you also work for yourself. So obviously we are coming from a place of 3 self-employed women, but you've just started a new role as well. So how's that going to be balanced in your new routine? And then how does your husband play a part in that as well?
I mean, I think my husband is the key to making this work. Like, I don't know how people do this on their own. Hats off to them. If they can manage to do this on their own, they have my utmost respect.
Oh my goodness.
So for the first, absolutely. I mean, for the first 6 months of Patrick's life, we tried, because we both worked at home, and Craig was employed by a big company. And we just tried to kind of make it work between us. And I tried to work after he had finished, and we just tried to squish it all in, and it just, we were burnt out, absolutely burnt out. I had to go back to work quite quickly because I'm self-employed. And so we eventually took the decision that actually something had to give. And so Craig stopped his job. He does work part-time for my company, so he does a bit of picks up some stuff from my business. But for the most part, he's the primary parent, and he does the childcare. And he does a much better job of it than I would be able to do, because he's much more that way inclined. He's much better at organising and making sure that Patrick's fed and watered and taken out to play and all of that kind of stuff. So he does that so that I can get my head down and try and build the businesses out, in the hope that, kind of like Jodie said, if I work really hard now, maybe in a year's time, I can kind of take my foot off the gas a bit, and we both can take our foot off the gas a bit. So I've taken on this new role from January. It's an associate job, so I can pick my hours at the beginning of every semester.
Great.
And I'm just going to dip my toe in and see how it goes. And then the plan is that I will commit to a regular contract going forward. But for the first semester, I'll be able to just get a feel for it and get a feel for what I can commit to. But the thing that appealed to me is that it's a PAYE job. It's employed, so there is a bit of a safety net for me there. I mean, it's not the biggest safety net in the world, but it just means that I can breathe a bit and know that actually, if I'm sick one month, at least I've got that income coming in, or I've got some, I have some annual leave, I have some sick time coming in. If we were ever fortunate enough to have another baby, there's maternity attached to that. So yeah, it's been a really difficult journey trying to figure this out, and a lot of this has been about really just taking a leap of faith and thinking, actually, we have to have faith that these businesses are going to fly, because otherwise, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? And so just take that kind of leap. And don't get me wrong, we are absolutely flat broke. Like, I have not got any money. I'm not doing this because I can afford to do it by any stretch of the imagination, but it's the best thing for our family at this point. And hopefully, it's an informed gamble that we hope will pay off.
Absolutely.
I think,
go on, Jodie.
I think what's interesting is that Fran and I have almost interestingly kind of done a bit of a changeover or a crossover in very similar circumstances, but kind of made very different decisions, which I think is key really to today. Because they are massively different. And I know Fran and I, in the early days, we had conversations, should we think about nanny sharing? What could childcare look like for us? We used to do strategy meetings walking around Meadowhall, which is our local indoor kind of massive shopping centre in Sheffield. And with the prams, just moving them until they're okay and not crying. So I think what's interesting as I'm sitting here thinking about it and reflecting is that actually Fran and I have done a complete crossover. So I've gone away from my payroll job and actually said, well, actually financially we would be okay because my husband's got a decent job. So we could probably be tight, but we could make it work if for some reason my income stopped. But for Fran, the right thing for her and her little one was actually for her husband to do the childcare. So I think I guess the nugget from that is that it's completely different for everybody, and I think one of the things that I've been reflecting on is you've got to find your own journey in that, and you've got to work out what's right for you, because actually I looked at that job that Fran, because they were looking for lots of associates, and Fran pinged it over to me, and I looked, and actually I had a conversation with the lecturer there, and I just panicked at the thought of applying for a job and then having to listen, having to do what they want me to do and to commit to a weekly time. Actually, I said to my husband, actually, I'm panicking about this. I don't want to apply for this, So I think like listening to yourself in that's quite important, I think, which is something that me and Fran have both had to do. And we're hearing very different things so that we can move Mantle forward.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the key things that we want everyone to take away from today, is that everyone is on a different journey with this, and we've got people on this call today that have got older children than what we've got, that have already worked out all of this, and it's either working for them or it feels like it's not. But I think the key message is that there is a way of doing this, and it's not necessarily the way that society thinks that we should do it. And just reflecting on what you were reflecting on there, Jodie, around you guys doing it differently. I would put myself somewhere in the middle, actually, and me and my husband are kind of half and half. So yes, he does work full time, but he looks after Rosa 3-4 afternoons a week, and he was, prior to this job, he had condensed his hours down to 30 hours a week to be able to do that before she was in childcare. So it's all a juggle, and I think we are 3 women doing it in 3 different ways, and we've got multiple people on the call today that are at all different stages, which is wonderful. I know we've got Bethany on the call today that's looking at going back to work after maternity leave, and we've got other people on the call that have got children that have just started school. So maybe that brings, I don't know, brings a bit more flexibility, because you know you've got the school hours covered, but actually you've got to do the school runs then, haven't you, Caitlin? And that kind of struggle. So there's so much that goes into it, and I think it's about evolving it as children get older as well, isn't it? And really listening to what we want to do in our businesses and in our careers has to be a strong voice in that. It shouldn't only be our decisions shouldn't only be determined by either what society thinks we should do, or by purely just thinking about our children either, because yes, they are a very important part in this, but we are as well, and it's about working out what's right for our partners and our families holistically, really. Jodie and Fran, we've got quite a few people on the call that are freelance or are thinking about freelance, and we've also got people on the call that are employed, and I know that you both have extensive experience of managing teams of people, and obviously are now parents yourself. Jodie, I think you mentioned being naive when you were previously managing people that were becoming parents and had children. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on perhaps how employers or managers on the call can actually help support parents with their work-life balance, work-life parenting balance, and then perhaps we'll hear from Fran as well on how she's handled that as a charity CEO in the past.
Yeah, I think so I think it's a really tough one, because it completely depends what you're in. So with my business, A Mind Apart, we are a performing arts company, which means that we are delivering classes, workshops, therapy sessions. So actually some of the working time is really unflexible. Like, we can't really be flexible on when we deliver our evening classes, right? So I think for me, this is about being aware of where your staff are at. So being super conscious that actually I do have a lot of females that work for me, because it just attracts females because of what we do. And often those females are in their 20s, early 30s, and they're thinking about having children. So, you know, there's a whole, I guess for me right now, where I'm at with it is I'm listening to my staff. So if they're saying to me, you know, if my manager is saying to me, look, so-and-so she's asking about maternity on her contract, on this new contract we've given her, like straight away I'm like, right, she's thinking about maternity. So-and-so's just moved house. They're doing their house up. It's a big, like, this is the house for them. Right. Okay. She's thinking about settling down. Right. So for me, it's almost as a manager, I'm starting to read between the lines. And then I'm able to actually direct my team and those that are operational and kind of say to those managers, look, actually, you need to be thinking about this, this, and this. If they're going to go on maternity, here is what we need in the bank. Here is what we need to think about in terms of how we're growing them as individuals. So actually, can we get the freelancers to cover our evening classes? And then give them the focus in the day that, you know, on day sessions, can we give them more management opportunities? So actually almost doing the opposite of what a lot of organizations and businesses would do. I'm actually looking and going, how can I promote them? You know, because actually if I promote them, they don't have to teach, which is completely backwards. But probably a better way of working, right? So I think for me, there's definitely that going on right now. I think it's one of the things that really struck me was things like risk assessments. So I think a lot of people, when they when they're pregnant, they forget that they need to have a risk assessment at work. And even if you're sat at a desk, you still need a risk assessment. So it's things like that where I'm kind of like, well, actually, if they're teaching, they definitely need a risk assessment, and we need to be really clear on what that looks like, and when do they stop teaching. And we need to have open communication with them. So actually, our HR needs to be really personable.
Yeah,
because that's the only way you start to really have those conversations with people. Okay, you've not been well, is there anything going on? And you can't have those conversations by making everything a protocol or a process. So the bigger your organization gets, the more processes you have, but then you lose the personable kind of contact with the individual. And we've got a massive coaching culture in our company. So I coach the manager that runs it, and then that kind of peters down, and kind of they each coach each other, really. And that's very much how I've managed it. So that's working well now. But I think the key is you need to be listening. You need to be listening to what they're saying, but also listening to what they're not saying. And I think that's a skill in itself as a manager. And I think if more managers were coaches, we'd have much better understanding of our teams and empathy, probably, because we'd be listening when, in between the lines, which is what a good coach does.
I mean, whenever I'm coaching anyone, the majority of the time they say it's just really nice to actually be heard, because they don't get that
exactly
in their work.
That's it.
So,
that's it. And I think adapting, I saw a LinkedIn post recently where they'd got this woman, and she was about to give birth, and basically he was like, anything she asks for, she gets it. She has a sofa. If she wants to work from the sofa, she can work from the sofa. And it caused uproar on LinkedIn. And I was like, this is amazing. This employer is like, nope. She's a queen in our office. We take care of her. She's bringing the next leaders in. And I just thought that's amazing. And that was a man. And I just thought that's absolutely amazing way to deal with it.
We need a bit more of that society, don't we? We don't get the credit.
And if we could do the same with flexible working, when they've had the child and they're going back to work, like, oh my God, that'd be amazing. Like, no, like, this is what they need. We're going to do everything we can to try and make this work. If they need to work from home, they can. And, when my staff need to do admin from home, then I let them work from home if they need to. And I try and be as flexible as I possibly can with needed things when they've got children. But I think as a manager, as a business owner, it's difficult because you're looking at the money coming in. And you're thinking, if you're not in the office, the money's not coming in. But that's not always the case.
Very true.
Because actually, if the health and well-being's not sorted, then they're not going to perform anyway.
And the longevity of that, thinking about that in a much longer term, the value of that, for sure.
Fran, but for charities, I think that's really hard to do at the moment.
Absolutely.
To think longevity.
It is, for sure. Fran, from your experience of leading charities, organisations, obviously that's something that you did prior to having your baby. So what are your thoughts on how employers can best support people when they become parents? And that's both men and women, really, isn't it?
I think it's a simple equation, really. Like, the kinder you are to people when they need you to be kind to them, the better they are as employees. Like, you would think that's common sense, but you'd be surprised. It's not that hard, I suppose, to replace somebody who goes off, because the employers will get they will get their kind of if they've done their contracts right when they're bidding for commission services, for example, they'll build in a buffer so that that extra money that they have to pay out should be sat in the bank, and then it'll get their statutory entitlement as well. But I have worked for a lot of organizations prior to being a CEO where there was just a really toxic atmosphere around people having babies. Like, it was a massive inconvenience for the business, and how dare they even dream of having their own family when we've got a business to run. So I do find that very, very strange, but that's I can't speak to what that's like outside of the charity sector, really, because that's kind of, I suppose, where the bulk of my experience comes from. But certainly I've worked for a number of large charities, large well-known charities, where there's been a very toxic perception of pregnancy, of adoption leave, of parental leave, all those things. But yeah, I mean, you know, if, like Jodie said, if you're treating somebody well during their pregnancy, gosh, if you're promoting them during their pregnancy, they're going to come back, aren't they? They're going to be an amazing employee when they come back. Why wouldn't you do that? Like, that's just the obvious thing to do. It's blooming hard work being a parent. So if your employer makes it a bit easier for you, you know, then you're gonna be a smashing employee. So it's trying to be as flexible as possible within the confines of what you can offer as a business. I think that's the key. I don't think there's a hard and fast rule as to how you should do that. And obviously there is the need that you do have to consider the needs of the business, and you do have to consider the risk assessment from a business perspective as well, and what that means for the business. But fundamentally, you know, you're good to people, they'll be good back to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to take just a moment while we're on the call today to share a few slides so that we can really learn how to identify when we might need a bit of additional support, or perhaps when things aren't in the balance that we need them to be in. So let's start really with what parental burnout might actually be. We kind of know, I would imagine, what burnout is in general, but when it comes to parental burnout, when things aren't in balance, when we've got so much on our plates, when we're trying to juggle our work and juggle our parenting, sometimes it can feel like that balance is completely off. And I've coached many people prior to being a parent myself, and now, who, you know, and I'm friends with many people in my kind of mum networks that are definitely showing some of these signs. So I think it's really important for all of us as parents to know how to recognize these kind of symptoms in both ourselves, our colleagues, anyone we're managing or working with, but also our kind of villages that are around us that are supporting us with our children as well. So parental burnout is a state of chronic and physical emotional exhaustion. Like any kind of burnout, it is the most extreme form of stress, and it happens over a prolonged period of time. And it goes beyond that kind of ordinary stress of bringing up a child. Everybody feels stress bringing up a child. It is a stressful thing, but this is having a significant impact on the well-being of the parent or the parents, and the quality of the parenting. And by that I mean, is it impacting how you would want to parent? There's no kind of rules with that. It's whether or not you feel you're able to do what you hoped with your parenting. So what are some of the causes of parental burnout? So excessive workloads, juggling heavy workloads both in the office and in the home. So when we're thinking about workloads, it's not just our to-do lists in our everyday work role now, is it? We've got to-do lists and we've got mental load and all those things coming into play in the home as well, and that's, you know, ramped up even more when it gets near Christmas, isn't it? I was having lots of conversations about that recently with clients around it, you know, just about keeping our heads above water, and then all of a sudden you've got to write Christmas cards and buy Christmas gifts and think about hosting and all of those things, and whether or not Santa's got his DBS check, like I was mentioning this morning, Fran and Jodie. You know, there's so much that comes into actually having an enjoyable time and everything looking great. So just recognizing that really, and realizing that is an awful lot of demand on us as people. So we need to be looking after ourselves as well. Easier said than done, I know. So limited work-life balance. We've spoken about what work-life balance looks like for Fran, Jodie and I today. That will look different for everyone on the call and everyone watching the recording, but it's about working out what works for you as a family, and trying to get that best balance by having clear boundaries where possible. Financial stress is obviously a cause of stress in itself. So being, you know, making these decisions, like Fran was saying, you know, changing working patterns, not both working full time anymore because you have this additional person to think about. You know, that is a change in lifestyle, a change in priorities, and that's definitely been the case for me and Alex. So you've got less money coming in, and then in our case, childcare costs. So it's balancing all of that and working out how to best do that. So childcare challenges, that brings me on to the next one. So managing the complexities of childcare logistics. So I'm again lucky enough to work for myself, where I'm doing the webinar today and I've got one thing after this, but then I need to be available to pick up Rosa from childcare because my husband's not around today. So it's really about juggling that as best as possible, but it does need to be built into our day. And I've got clients who work for businesses and work for charities who have to have those kind of conversations with their line managers about taking half an hour out to do the school run, and then after the school run is done, their line managers being aware that yes, they are still working and yes, they are still doing their hours, but they do have 2 little ones that may well need their attention, and just having those open conversations with line managers. And it can be a bit of a lottery, can't it, whether or not you get a good line manager or not, and that's not wholly fair. So maybe we need a massive overhaul of what's actually in policies, so that even if we don't have a line manager that's willing to actually prioritize parents and prioritize flexible working, that maybe they don't have a choice because it's the rules. That would be very nice. And then workplace pressures, we've spoken a bit about that today. So there being a bit of a negativity around parents, or an attitude that people aren't doing their best work if they're going off on maternity leave, or they're juggling having children. That can be people's attitude, so navigating that is very stressful. And then lack of personal time. I'm pretty sure if you were all on camera right now, I'd be getting lots and lots of nods because that is definitely something when we're talking about balance, and we're talking about kind of fitting everything in and making sure that we're balancing everything. I can talk from personal experience that my personal time and any kind of hobbies I might have once had are definitely the plates that have fallen, that with everything else spinning in the air. So hopefully that will come back at some point. I've got people on the call with older children but I very much hope they're at a point now where they can perhaps get a bit more personal time, but it is tricky when you're in the toddlerhood stage, for sure. Caitlin's shaking her head. Okay, maybe I've got to wait 10 years, maybe a bit more than that. We'll get there again, guys. So let's have a think about how we can identify parental burnout in ourselves and in others, because again, we are all going to be in networks of either colleagues or friends, our village that is helping us with our child. So we need to be aware of this, not only for ourselves, our partners could also be experiencing this, and it's for us to all be supportive of each other. So it could look like persistent fatigue. So yes, sleep is a challenge when you've got children, but actually sometimes no matter how much sleep you're getting, are you still tired? That is a symptom that could be related to burnout. Difficulty managing and expressing emotions, decline in work performance, or patience when parenting. My goodness, that is my hand's going up for that one, because if I am feeling stressed, I do not do my best parenting, and I really feel guilty about that. So that is definitely a sign for me where I kind of have to do a bit of a tag team with Alex and say, do you know what, you're going to have to come in. If you're not in a meeting, I need you right now, because I'm just going to go upstairs and sit on the bed for a bit. I need a moment. And that's okay. And if you've got the flexibility with, you're both of you working from home, brilliant. That's not always the reality for me. It's kind of half and half with Alex being in the office. So it is nice to have, when I can have it, that moment away. Things like low morale, lack of enthusiasm, or loss of purpose. I speak to a lot of parents who are finding that all of a sudden they've got this other big, huge, amazing purpose in life as being a parent, and actually does that shift our identity? Quite often it does. Does that shift our perception of what we want our purpose in the working environment, in our careers and our businesses? Does that change? Quite often it does. So thinking about how that balances now that you've got a different identity or a different purpose after this, you know, massive shift of bringing a human into the world, and then reacting strongly to minor frustrations or challenges. Understandably, we've got shorter fuses if we're knackered. Avoiding social interactions or isolating yourself. So again, in more general burnout, if we're burnt out from work, pulling back a little bit from interactions with colleagues and stepping back and from our work is something that we might see in parenting in general. I've seen this in friends. They'll start saying no to things, or you won't get a response for them on the WhatsApp group that's pinging off all the time. You know, check in on those people that you haven't heard from in a while, because they might well be the ones that are struggling. And then physical symptoms, so headaches, stomach aches, you know, tension in your neck, in your jaw, in your shoulders, all things to be really, really mindful of. So that feels pretty bleak. What can we actually do about it? So creating a balance that really aligns with your family. I think me, Fran and Jodie are hopefully examples of how you can do that in 3 very different ways, to make sure that you're taking into account each family member's strengths. And I loved what Fran said earlier about the fact that she has, you know, you are choosing as a partnership with your husband that he does the majority of the childcare and you're doing the majority of the working, and that's not a way round that we often see. And for myself and my husband to be doing it more half and half, where he does look after Rosa in the afternoons and I do the mornings, was something that we didn't really think of before we actually had a session with a coach ourselves. It was meant to be a coaching session for me, but obviously as I was breastfeeding at the time, Rosa and Alex came along and our coach ended up coaching the 3 of us in what life looks like when we both returned after shared parental leave. And it was, you know, I that afternoon that we spent with that coach has absolutely changed the way both of our careers look, both of our parenting looks, how our schedule looks, you know, down to our color-coded digital shared calendars. You know, everything came from that one conversation with an external person that questioned, do we need to do it how everyone else is doing it, or do we need to do it how society thinks we should do it? Is there a different way of doing this? And thank goodness we had that, because it's what's created what we have now, and I wouldn't change it as hard as it is. It's what's right for our family. So trying to ignore what is expected of us and really think about and finding what works for your family. So do you have a partner that works shift work? And actually what that means is that you need to maybe work slightly different hours. You know, hard and fast rules of not working in the evenings perhaps don't apply in that situation, because maybe that is the time you can work and that makes sense for your family. I know that Jodie, you do some work in the evenings, don't you? And you know, for someone that is working 9 to 5 Monday to Friday, you know, I always say as a coach, you shouldn't be working late nights if you're doing that in addition to your already full-time hours. But for someone that's doing very flexible working, and if you are having big chunks of your day out when you are looking after a child, working in the evening or sometimes on weekends is what is needed and what works for your family. So that's brilliant. So it's all about creating a balance that really supports your desired parenting styles. Again, me, Fran, Jodie, we have very different parenting styles, I would say, as well. So we're doing this all in very different ways. So it's what works for you. So speaking of color coordinated calendars, this is absolutely what runs mine and Alex's marriage, our family, my business. Everything is on that calendar. If it's not on that calendar, it is not happening. So he's out at a social Christmas party this afternoon, so I know I'm doing the pickup. If that wasn't in the calendar, one of my coaching clients might have booked in a coaching call and then everything would have gone to put. So it really does need to be well organized and structured. And Jodie, we were talking about how you have to be really organized with your time as well. And it is flexible, but within organization, right? And sometimes people think those two things are separate, but it's about being flexible and organized at the same time to make sure this machine is running smoothly. And then having a kind of balance between your work and your well-being as well. So recognizing that your well-being is essential. And again, I know how hard that is, because I would love to go swimming once a week, and that's really tough. And I can't quite get it in the calendar yet, but I'm working on it. But thinking about ways that you can do that. So do you take, I try and get out of a lunchtime when I've got childcare and do a walk. How can you build those things into your routine so that you're also trying to look after yourself? So I hope that that's been helpful to kind of give you an idea of all the different ways you can go about kind of trying to make this this balance work. And actually, it might well be that you have a routine and you have something that you've been doing for many years, and perhaps after this webinar you think, oh, we could tweak that slightly and it might make things feel a bit easier for you as a family. So if that happens to even one person on this call, it could be an absolute game changer, can't it? So I hope that is the case. Fran, Jodie, I would love to hear your thoughts on what was shared there, and perhaps reflect on your roles in business and parenthood and any strategies that work for you personally, and how you've incorporated those into your kind of daily, weekly routines.
Yeah, shall I go first? I've got loads. As you were talking, loads of other ones were popping into my head.
Amazing.
So the lack of personal time, I think that's a good one, because when my child was an IVF child, so I didn't think I could have children, and then he came IVF, and I'd convinced myself that it wasn't going to work, and we were lucky that it worked first time. And we were going through that process during COVID, where we were getting referred to IVF, etc. And the bargain with my husband was that I'm absolutely fine to have child, but I've worked my ass off for my businesses and I wasn't going to let that go. So I was okay with having a child, but he had to step up. Yeah. And then the other bargain that we had was that we married quite late on, kind of in our kind of mid-30s. So for both of us, we'd very much got things we love to do, and we were very used to having our own time. And kind of as a relationship, that's been quite important to us. We've both also worked away a lot. So even in the early stages of marriage, we were away from each other quite a lot. So at least one of us would be traveling during the week for work for a few days. So when we had Axel, one of the conversations we had was that we would allow the other person to have that personal time. So one of my negotiations with him was I do agility with my dog. So I've got a border collie and we do agility.
I didn't know that about you. I love that.
Yeah. And we're not great. We're just moving clubs so that we can start competing, but we're not great. He can be, but cool. My dog's a bit stubborn. But yeah, so and I absolutely love it. And it's actually he gets more exercise than me on it, but it is one of my only exercises, like times of exercise at the moment. So the deal was that I would still be able to do agility. So that's usually on an evening or it's usually at a weekend. But that was the deal, that no matter what, I can still do agility. And my husband plays cricket. So for him, the deal was that no matter what, he can still do cricket. And that would be an evening a week during cricket season, where he might go and do the nets. And then they have 2 games a weekend, but he would do one of those games and he would work that around what I need, like my agility or whatever I needed it worked around. And so we allowed each other to do that. And that's worked really well. So I don't feel, Axel would stay with Sanjeet without me from day one. So that, and I bottle fed it in the end because we really struggled with breastfeeding. So that was really kind of key. So Axel's very used to his dad being around and his dad putting him to bed and doesn't feel like he needs me to do that. And then Secondly, my best friend lives in Portugal, and I was getting to the point where I just could not deal with stuff. I was like, I have had enough. This is too much. I need to step away. So I just said to my husband, I'm going to Portugal for 5 days. Bye.
Oh my goodness.
Literally. And booked it for like 2 or 3 weeks later. And went to Portugal to see my best friend 5 days, spend time with my godchildren. And then when I came back, my husband did a similar thing. So I actually worked the trip around all the childcare as well. So we didn't have to have him during the day. So I was very, very organised. It was a last minute decision, but I was very organised on how I worked it out around childcare for him. So he didn't need to have him during the day. But then he did the same a month or so later, and he went away for 5 days. And I just think for us, that's been really key and really important, and actually really healthy for him, because he suddenly, when I come back, and it's like he's way more helpful because he realizes how hard it is, and he's been way more around the house. I need to go away every month. So for us, that's been like a really key allowance that we've allowed each other to have. And then the other one that I was thinking about as you were talking that's a bit different is the working nights.
Yeah.
So because I have Axel in childcare 3 days a week, one of those is my mum's. When I pick him up from mum's, I get her to cook for me. So I eat tea with them and Axel. So I don't have to go home and make tea. And then all I do is get him home, bath him. And then, so Monday is quite nice because I don't have to think about his food at all day. I just need to worry about my lunch and maybe breakfast. And then, so then often I'll come home, bath him, and then I will start and do more work, knowing that I've got Tuesday off and I want to have it with him.
Yeah.
So it does often mean that those days are a bit longer, but it means that I've got the days off that I want off, and I might just do emails or a really easy, what I call TV jobs, whilst he's sleeping.
TV jobs.
Like I always say to Fran, that's a TV job. I'll do it whilst watching TV in the evening, or if I've been working one evening and then he's in childcare and I feel exhausted, I just give myself permission to not work. So sometimes I will have a day where I literally just like have a box set on, he's in childcare, and I'm sat doing TV jobs in front of the TV. And I am a bit of a multitasker anyway, so I find that quite easy to do that. But do you
feel any level of guilt when you're doing your
not anymore
in childcare and you do TV jobs?
Not at all.
No?
I'm not. No.
That's
so
great.
I'm not.
I would struggle with that personally. I would feel guilty.
So I'm maternal, okay, but this is how I see it. If I and this is how I've always seen my leadership. So I kind of see it very similar as a parent. If I can't look after myself and give myself the headspace and the space that I need, like, then I'm not going to be able to be the best mum or the best leader that I can be. And I have this thing as well where I'm really and part of this is probably just my issues, and there's probably something attached to it psychologically, but I'm really like, my baby doesn't define me. So I was a leader before I was a mother. And I ran a business before I was a mother, and I'm all these other things before a mother. So for me, I absolutely love my child, like would do anything for him, but he doesn't define me. And so for me, that's the thing I hold on to, that I don't want him to define. If anything, I want to define him, right? And the way I'm going to define him is by looking after myself, because then he's going to look up to a mother who is like, she really looks like she really gets what this health and well-being is. She's really trying with it. She knows when she needs to walk away from something. And she when she gives me my time, she gives it to me. So I try and be quite strict with that as much as I can be.
That's really inspiring, Jodie. We've got a question in the chat actually, and I definitely encourage anybody that's got any thoughts or anything that works for you as you in your families, please write it in the chat and we'll kind of read it out. Or if you want to put your hand up and talk as well, like, please go ahead. We've got Charlotte here saying, I love that, Jodie. Same. How did you get to the state of removing the guilt and actually giving yourself permission?
I don't know if I ever felt the guilt, but I wonder whether I didn't feel the guilt because I worked on it well before I had him. And what I mean by that is, because I ran a business for many years, I used to feel guilty when I wasn't working on it. So I could be having a night off and I would feel guilty. I should be working on my business.
Right.
And I think actually when Axel came along, I'd already almost done that psychological work, not allowing something to guilt me. Yeah.
Mm.
And you know, I used to say for a long time, my business is my baby. And so I think probably I'd already worked on the practice of that, so that when Axel came along, it almost just felt like a really natural thing. And, you know, sometimes I am messaging and checking emails whilst I've got him. I'm not saying that I'm, you know, perfect, but I don't feel guilty when, you know, often I'll say to Fran, I need to look at this later. I can't do it. I don't feel guilty for saying that.
No.
You know, because Fran gets it, and why should I feel guilty for putting my child first? So I think, yeah, I don't know if I'm not sure I ever felt it like that, but I think it's because my frame of mind was already, it was already prioritizing me, because I'd learned a long time ago from burnout from my business that if I don't prioritize me and look after me, I can't be a good leader, a good friend, a good wife, a good I can't do that stuff well. I have to, like, you can't love, somebody else can't love you before you love yourself, and you can't love others until you love yourself, right? And it's that same mindset.
Yeah, it does sound like you learnt those strategies through having a business baby before you had Axel, doesn't it? That's really interesting. If anyone else on the call has got any thoughts on guilt, how they manage that kind of guilt in terms of balance, please share in the chat. I can keep you anonymous when I read it out, or you can share your name. Yeah, we would love to hear your thoughts on that. Fran, what are your thoughts on the subject of parental guilt? Is that something that you experience? How do you manage that? Yeah,
very badly.
Yeah, same.
I am crap at it. I feel perpetually guilty that I'm not doing enough, that I can't give him enough, that I'm not there enough, that, you know, that I'm doing this wrong or that wrong. And it's, you know, it's an unhealthy level of guilt that I carry. And, you know, undoubtedly because of my own baggage. But I know what I should be doing. And I think my husband knows what I should be doing as well. So we're very good as a team to sort of, you know, identify, and he's just as bad as I am, but, you know, to identify when we get to the point where we're like, you seem a bit crabby. That's because you haven't been to the gym this week.
Yeah.
Go on, off you go, you know, in generally much stronger terms than that. Yeah, and go to the gym. You know, that tends to be the way it goes. So I think, you know, I've done the work over the years to understand how the inputs I put into myself, my diet, my exercise, my sleep, my personal space, my hobbies, all of that stuff impacts on who I am and how I act. And I know what I need to do. It's just doing it. Sometimes it's really hard. But the interesting thing is, the further you get into burnout, the harder it is to convince yourself that you should be doing those things to look after yourself. Because it becomes this kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. Like the longer I go without going to the gym, the harder it is to go to the gym, because I feel so bad about going out for an hour. Which is, you know, which is counterproductive, because I know that if I go out for an hour, I'm going to be a much nicer person when I come back.
It is the case, isn't it?
More easy to live with. Yeah.
You're super more productive as well, Fran, when you do that hour.
Absolutely.
Super more productive. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, trying to be healthy with it, trying to get back into it, but it's really hard. And it's one of life's mysteries, why it is that you feel like you have more energy when you do exercise. What's that about? Like, if you're absolutely exhausted, the last thing you want to do is exercise, isn't it? But actually, you do the exercise, you feel less exhausted. And I don't understand why that is, because clearly you've just done something really strenuous.
There's some fact that I forget it exactly, but it's something like for every hour of exercise you do, you need 20 minutes less sleep.
Oh wow!
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's some, because I used to salsa dance until stupid o'clock in the morning, and I used to still be able to get up at 9 o'clock. and get to work and get home and then go salsa again until like 2 a.m. And I never understood why. And then I found this part. I was like, oh, that makes sense. Yes, because I'm dancing for 5 hours a night.
It's so peculiar, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
it just doesn't make any sense, but it is true. And you just have to remember that it's true when you don't want to do it. Like when you're exhausted.
And having someone else to hold you accountable to that is really helpful, isn't it? And that's why I wanted to share those signs, really, because we can recognize that in our colleagues and our partners perhaps a bit easier than we can recognize that in ourselves. But yeah, it is so true. You know, I don't necessarily have anything on a regular basis right now that I do for myself, and I definitely want to build that in when I've got a bit more childcare in the new year. Maybe I'll do a Wednesday morning swim. Can you all hold me accountable to that? I've said it now, it's got to happen. But yeah, I did a workshop recently with a friend on a Thursday. Rosa was in childcare, and we went and made Christmas wreaths for our front doors. And there was a bit of me that was like, oh, I feel, you know, should I be doing, I'm paying for childcare, I should be working while I'm in childcare. Or if my parents have Rosa, I always get the question of, you know, what work did you do today? Or what, you know, productive day? And I'm like, oh, I have to be, you know, there's that, I have to be productive. I have to be doing stuff if someone else has got Rosa. But actually, sometimes the most productive thing is for us to look after ourselves. And I felt brilliant after I had that morning off to do a wreath workshop. And, you know, I went out for lunch with my friend, and I was such a brilliant mum that night. Like, I did my best parenting that evening because I just spent time, you know, speaking to a friend, because she's got a similar age child to me. We've known each other for 13 years, but we haven't really caught up in the last 2, because we always see each other with our children, and we have about 3 different conversations going at the one time, and one of us is running after all the children, and, you know, it's chaos. So actually, just to sit with a friend actually and have a conversation was really refreshing. We've got a couple of things coming in on the chat. So Caitlin said, alongside parental guilt, I also feel house guilt. So if my husband takes the kids out to give me space, I always feel like that's my chance to clean and sort the kids' bedrooms.
House guilt, I feel. Caitlin.
Yeah.
I'm with you. And I have got a new strategy for it.
Oh, go on, tell.
So I got into this place, and I kept saying it to Fran. I just keep cleaning. Like, it's driving me mad. The house is driving me mad. So sometimes, like this week, I've had my sister-in-law here for 2 months, and she's just gone back to India. And today I'm accepting the house as a mess. It's just a mess. I'm just going to ignore it. But what I started to do was I started to do a to-do list for everything, because I also do the DIY in our house. So I decided everything needed a to-do list. So every cleaning task that I do in a week goes on a to-do list, and it has a deadline, and it repeats every week. And every time I do that, every time I hoover the stairs, ka-ching, it's done. Or if I'm like, okay, what's my one cleaning task today? Then I will literally have a look on my phone and be like, right, this is the cleaning task. If I do nothing else, this is all I've got to do. And it's made me feel so much better. Like, there's always a room that's a mess, but at least there's a room I can go into also that's usually tidy. So, you know, there's at least one room tidy and at least one a messy.
I love it. And then
we do that on the weekend. Yeah. So I do it at the weekend, but sometimes I'll do it in the morning. So if I wake up because Axel's a good sleeper. So this is the other thing. I've got a good sleeper. So sometimes I'll do it at night. But, you know, sometimes I'll do it at night, or I'll do it in the morning before he's awake. So yeah, I can. But I chunked it down. So I always think of it as like bite size, you know, like GCSE bite size revision when we were younger. I always think of it like that. I bite size my cleaning, and then I feel way better about it. But I am at the point now where I'm thinking, I think I want a cleaner back. So I am looking for a cleaner. And part of me is just having to accept that if I really want a clean house, if I want it to be well cleaned, I've just got to give 20-30 quid a week to somebody to do it, and I can make that money back, you know. So I think it's swings and roundabouts, and it's what suits you at that point. But the to-do list is the way. So bad about it.
My husband does a big intake of breath when I get a certain notebook out of the junk drawer on a Saturday morning. he knows I mean business, and he knows that we're going to have a productive weekend as well as a, you know, wholesome family time weekend. He knows that there is stuff that needs to get done, and if we can both, you know, we put that on the kitchen table, and we'll, you know, if Rose is having a nap, we'll be like, right, what can we do? Tick it off, get the Christmas decorations out, you know, those kind of tasks. But I will say he does the cleaning and the majority of the cooking in our house, whereas I do a bit more of the looking after Rosa of the morning. So it is about finding balance. And, you know, again, there was so many opinions around that. You know, I as the woman don't clean and don't cook, like the audacity of that, you know. And actually my husband is far better at those things and hates it even if I give it a go. So, you know, why would I? Fran, you put your hand up. Have you got any thoughts to share?
Yeah, well, we've just admitted defeat, to be honest, because yeah, our house is, we've been trying to clean the house for, he's 17 months old now, so for that plus my entire pregnancy, I've been really bad at cleaning, and yeah, we just don't have enough time to give it a really good, you know, it just needs a really good once over, and we've been doing surface cleaning. Anyway, I found this wonderful cleaning company, and they're going to come and do a deep clean. So they're sending 2 people to my house for 10 hours in January. It's going to cost me 100 quid. They are going to clean it top to bottom and organise everything for me for 100 quid. I'm like, well, so yeah, that's my Christmas present to myself.
Wait, they're going to organise for you, Fran?
They're going to organise it and clean it.
Okay, not the cleaning, but the organising.
Okay.
What are you doing?
Clearly, you need to send that detail over to Jodie because you're local to each other.
I need that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh, I love that. Phoebe had a cleaner for a birthday present from her dad. I love that.
Oh, that sounds like honestly, an amazing
isn't that so amazing? Like, who needs another, like, I don't know, bottle of perfume or something? Like, yeah, get me a cleaner. That would be amazing. The chat's going very fast. I can't get to it, but I'm going to make a cleaning rota for me and my partner when I go back to work. One thing each day to keep on top. Yeah, absolutely. I think Phoebe, is the organised mum method the one where you pick a room for each day? Is that?
Yeah, so there's like excuse me, yeah, so there's like a base level of clean that you do every day. So like sweep up, put stuff away, wipe around the bathroom, and then it's like a deep clean in a room for every day, but it's for half an hour. So that's it, it's like a timed thing, and whatever you don't get done that day, you just do it the next week, so it kind of rolls on. But she's got these really good like guided cleans, so she literally talks you through stuff, and I find them really useful when I'm like procrastinating to not do stuff.
You listen to them,
especially like putting the so she does it through a podcast on Patreon. I think it's £2.99 a month. But it's so useful, especially for like tidying up the kitchen, you know, like after tea and everything's a mess, and you're like, I have no idea where to start. I've got other stuff to do. I don't want to tidy up the kitchen. It's like, right, 20 minutes, come on, let's go. Right, let's focus on this bit for 30 seconds, go. And they're really handy. And she does like guided like work sessions through that as well, which can be helpful when you're like procrastinating a lot, as I do.
I think so I find that without knowing about that. That's
exactly. That's literally what you do.
Exactly, pretty much how I do it, yeah. Pretty much. And then I have like a really good routine in the kitchen, to the point that I don't even let my husband do it unless I'm not in, and then he can do it, because like I have this, you know, Axel gets fed. Sometimes I'll eat with him, sometimes I'll eat when he's in bed. But then once he's like just finishing his food, certain things get done, he goes and plays, and I have this whole routine around the kitchen that means that by the end of it, before he's even in bath, and it's like half an hour, the kitchen is clean, and I can kind of carry on with my night.
How you feel about that routine and not letting your husband do it is how my husband feels about not letting me do it.
I mean,
we're the same. I'm not allowed
to do it properly. I'll just have to go back and carry on. It's quicker for me to do it.
I don't do it properly either. And actually, Alex has taken now to getting Rosa involved in these things, to the point where I can't believe I'm going to admit this. Rosa's quite obsessed with bins. She loves doing the bins, and it's like, you know, fine in the house because we keep the bins quite tidy and clean, and because we know she likes to do the bins once a week with Alex. Not so great when we're out and about and she's, you know, in the pram, bin, like it's Disneyland. She really loves a bin. Yeah, it's not great.
I did give Axel a brush and pan to play with the other week whilst I was cleaning my kitchen.
Perfect.
I was like, yeah, you can sit there and play with the brush and pan and learn how it works. And I'm just going to sweep over here and clean the sides.
I can't hoover without Rosa also wanting to hold on and hoover with me these days. So it slows everything down. But
the other thing I have, which is a game changer, is a robo hoover.
Oh yeah, they do sound
Game changer. And I still do a deep clean with the hoover, and I still do my carpets upstairs, but my downstairs is all it's not laminate, but it's like posh vinyl.
Yeah.
And so I have and I've got a dog as well, so I have the hoover downstairs, and that is a game changer. Everybody needs to get a robotic hoover, honest. And the kids love it.
Oh,
the kids love it. The dog stays away from it. It's great. It's brilliant. Game changer.
Again, let me have a look at the chat. You've got a robo hoover. Amazing. Has anyone else got any thoughts on anything that works for them in their families or in their jobs or in their careers? I would love to hear from a few other people. You know, please do pop your hand up and talk to us, or put it in the chat. A bit of an open discussion on what works for you, your careers, your families. Caitlin, hi.
Hi, can everyone hear me? I'm not sure if my
you're
speaker's
good.
working. Oh,
Yeah.
good. My life changer for me, and again, it's going against what society says we should do as mums, is TV. So I had this discussion with my husband the other day, and he said, when I get the kids in from school and Wilf, our oldest, goes to drumming lessons on the Wednesday night at 5 o'clock, it's chaos. I've got to get their lunch bags sorted. I've got to cook their dinner. I've got to get them into out of school uniform into normal clothes. And I have to, and they're at me. They want to drink. They want to snack. And I was like, that's when you put them in front of the telly. And they, that's my little tidbit.
Yeah.
I found a way to make that educational as well, Caitlin. So I want my little boy to learn Hindi because my husband's Indian, but my husband speaks Bombay Hindi, which is it's like the Yorkshire of English. So he doesn't want him learning it because he says it's really rough and no one in the rest of India speaks it. But I'm adamant he needs to learn Hindi now, not because it's Hindi, but because if he learns 2 languages, we're setting him up for life, basically, because of all the kind of evidence around it. So he kind of speaks it to him, but not enough. So I've started to put Hindi cartoons on for him and learning Hindi. So together, me and Axel are learning Hindi on TV. So at the weekend, my husband takes the dog out. I sit in front of the TV with Axel, have my chill time, and we learn Hindi. It's great.
And therefore, you're not feeling guilty because it's educational.
Exactly. They're just not, speaking Spanish or French or whatever.
Does that still count for me? Because I've got Wilf now, my oldest, who's 7.5. He loves quiz shows. So, pointless goes on the telly, glass of wine.
He's going to be a future
Come on, we're going to watch educational.
I love that.
Oh, amazing. No problem, Stephanie. Thank you. Oh, that's wonderful. I often get questions from my mum friends as to how I'm able to do Rosa's hair. And my response is always Miss Rachel. Miss Rachel helps me do Rosa's hair. It would not happen if I wasn't able to put Miss Rachel on and keep her attention. I didn't quite know how integral a co-parent Miss Rachel would be, but it's fantastic.
I like Miss Rachel. I can't say I love her. Fran does not like her at all.
No, I didn't. But
quite happily punch her in the face. If I'm honest, I thought she is just awful.
I can manage 10 minutes a day to do Rosa's hair, and that's it.
I mean, it means that you're teaching your child like American English, which I'm not. I'm questioning, but yeah,
right.
It's quiet. He loves her.
Bluey,
and the
Bluey's
word for Miss Rachel is da, not dada. It's da. That's Miss Rachel.
I've never come across Miss Rachel. What?
Oh, maybe she came in after your children were of the age.
She came through COVID. She was a music teacher in schools, and she
so maybe,
started during COVID. So a lot of her COVID videos that on YouTube now, like there's like a little bit underneath on what parents should do with the child. So it was like aimed at people with toddlers.
Yeah, no, we were into Blippy. We were all Blippy at that time.
She's quite good. She's just American. So you've got to cope with the American side of it.
Has anyone else got any thoughts before we bring it to a close today? Anything else that kind of works really well for you as families, or anything that you've implemented in your work perhaps? I know we've got a few people that work for charities on the call today, so is there any kind of conversations you've had with line managers in helping to balance work and parenting? Caitlin, you've kind of changed a bit of your working schedule, haven't you, to help with doing the school run and things like that, haven't you?
Yeah, so I started when my youngest Cora was about 3. I went back to work because I'd been off work with her. There wasn't any point in me working because my wage covered the childcare costs but nothing else, so it was like, well, I might as well be at home with the 2 children. But my previous job was really flexible. I was able to go home, work from home. I've started working with a local authority 4 months ago. And yes, I've arranged that I start at 10, so I can do the school run in the morning. And then I come in for 10 o'clock. I broadly work here till 5, although it's usually 4:30. And then I go home and do an extra hour and a half in the evening. But it is a killer going home and having to do that extra hour. I find that with the kids as well, and dinners, and it is really stressful. Yeah. And my line manager originally did say we'd review the 10 a.m. start, but I know there's no negotiation on that for me. I have to be there. My youngest is 5 now in reception class, so I can't put her into breakfast club every morning. No. It's not fair.
Yeah, and you'll know what's right for her as an individual. There'd be other children that would really thrive in breakfast club, wouldn't there? But if you know that the Cora needs that time with you of a morning, that's what you've got to prioritize, isn't it?
And I think, to be honest, I think she would love it. She's so social. She's the opposite of me. But I don't want to feel I'm missing out on them.
That's so
I don't want to feel that they're in breakfast club at 8 a.m. and then I don't see them till 5:30, and then I've got another hour of work to do on it. It's just
you'd only see your children when it's dark at the moment, wouldn't you? I've got a few friends actually that were in our antenatal class, and they have that they have to, or the decisions they've made, whichever way you want to say it has meant that they are dropping their children off at nursery in the dark, and they're picking their children up from nursery in the dark at the moment, and that just wouldn't be okay for me. But it works really well for them, and they're able to go and do their jobs, which actually really revitalizes them to then have a wonderful evening and wonderful weekends together as a family. So it's just, again, a testament to working out what works for you as a family, for you as individuals, because you are not just parents, you are, holistic human beings again, and what works for your child as well. And I don't think we, maybe Fran, Jodie and I don't yet know exactly, we know our children obviously, but we're at the stage where perhaps we don't know their personalities and what they're going to need yet from us all that much, and we're learning that at this stage, aren't we, and what they're going to need and what they're going to thrive doing, and all of those things is to come. But it's about evolving that and redoing it, rebranding how you do this whole work-life parenting balance at each different stage of the age of your children and the development of businesses and careers, because it's an evolution, isn't it? There's never going to be I've cracked it, this is working perfectly. Fantastic, thank you so much. Have you got any Jodie or Fran, have you got anything that you'd like to kind of close on today? Any final comments?
I see Phoebe's just raised her hand, actually. I was just interested.
Hello Phoebe, sorry I missed that. It's the same colour as your background.
Oh yes. I couldn't find the button. I was going to say that one thing that I've kind of tried to keep in my head is there's that analogy of juggling lots of balls, and some of them are glass and some of them are plastic, and it changes all the time which ones are glass and which ones are plastic. And sometimes the glass ones are things that the boys need, and for me that's kind of, I've got two children, 1 and 6, so they're doing very different things, but making sure that kind of the things that I know are a priority for them, they're my glass balls. So whether that's kind of going to stuff in school, whether that's making sure that we're going to different sessions, whether that's doing things that are important to them. But then sometimes there's stuff like, I joined the PTA for about 6 months and I was like, no, that's a plastic ball that can very much be dropped. That does not make me a better parent or really add anything to my life at all. So that can go. But then similarly, there's some really important stuff with work that needs to be a glass ball as well, like if there's important deadlines and things like that. And sometimes some of the stuff at school needs to be dropped because of that. And so I think trying to kind of keep that in mind and making sure that I know where my kind of hard lines are on stuff is really important. And I think that's helped with my parenting and making decisions about what I say yes to, what I don't say yes to, and what I put in place. So I think that's something that I find helpful. And I don't always get it right, because you don't, do you? Because it's hard. It's all hard, but I think that's that I find quite helpful.
We talk about that
I
all
think
the
that's
time
really
in sessions,
important,
don't we, Phoebe? But I love that analogy that you shared around the plastic and glass balls. Jodie?
I think that's really important, Phoebe. What you've just said about not being scared to say no, because I think as females we say yes to a lot, and also and I do think often as mothers we feel like we're holding things up that maybe the men can't hold up sometimes, and that's not because they're not capable of doing it, but that's because we've got this maternal connection with our child that, you know, sometimes the child just wants mum and just wants to sit with mum. So I think like for me actually, that again, that's another skill that I learned before I had my child, which I'm now putting back into play again, but actually just being comfortable with no, and not feeling like you're letting anybody down there or anything down, but you're, you know, no, I don't have the capacity, I don't have the strength, and that's it. That's no more excuse. You don't need an excuse, just say no. Right? Doesn't matter why you're saying no, you're saying no. And I think that's really important, that we don't need to feel bad about that, and we don't need to feel like we need to give an excuse for that.
It can feel like you need to justify those decisions, though, can't it? And I think if you're someone that feels really uncomfortable saying no to things, I spoke about this at a conference yesterday. I shared that you can say no by saying yes, but not right now. It just softens it slightly. And going back to, you know, talking about being organized, put it in the pipeline for a later date. If you know that it's something that's important to the person that's asking you to do it, but you haven't got capacity right now to do it because you've got, you know, your glass ball quota is full, you know, schedule that for a later date. See if you can, see if you can work on those deadlines and do it at a later date, or, you know, have that conversation with your line manager if it's something that they're asking you to do, and prioritize and really think about time management. Thank you, Charlotte. Thank you so much. Have we got any final thoughts from Jodie or Fran? Because I don't want to go over the 2 o'clock, because I know everyone's rushing off for other things. All good. Oh, well, thank you so much to Fran and Jodie for joining me today, and for everyone on the call, for being so open and sharing what works for you and for your families, because I think what we've learned today is that everybody truly does it differently, and that's the beauty of it, really, isn't it? And we just have to do it for what's right for us and what's right for our families. So hopefully you're taking away a few little nuggets. Maybe you're going to go away and buy a robotic Hoover. Maybe you're going to get a cleaner. I don't know what you're going to take away from today, but I would love to hear all of those takeaways in the feedback form once I send that out. We've got some lovely messages coming in on the chat to say thank you for the session, and that you felt it was really supportive. So I'm really pleased about that. Thank you so much, everyone.